Almost exactly 10 years ago, Nintendo released the first Super Mario Maker, a new and very unusual IP for Nintendo. A very unusual IP that actually ended up being quite successful. So successful, as a matter of fact, that Nintendo not only released a spin-off game on the 3DS soon later, but also developed a full-fledged sequel. But since the release of Super Mario Maker 2, it has become quiet around the Mario Maker brand. 6 summers came and went without any major news about Mario Maker's future. The Switch itself ended its successful career and the entire gaming world moved on. As of now, Mario Maker is nothing more than a faint memory of a series once popular on a console of the past. And all of this left fanatic fanboys like myself, thinking about an existential question. A question that is as important as it rhymes. The simple question of, will there ever be a Super Mario Maker 3? In this video, we are going to investigate this question. We're going to take a look at the current gaming market and at Nintendo's position in it. We'll speculate about Nintendo's plans with the Switch 2 and we'll analyze sales data, all in a desperate attempt to get our magical tea leaves to reveal the uncertain future of the Mario Maker franchise to us. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, are you ready? Then let's do this. Okay, so here's how video essays usually work. Usually, we ask a question at the very beginning of the video, explore the question throughout the video, and answer it at the very end. We're not going to do this today. Instead of slowly coming to an answer, we instead start with the answer today and then slowly figure out why I believe this answer to be the correct one. So allow me to proclaim the eternal answer to the question of whether there will ever be a Super Mario Maker 3. Yes, the answer is yes. In my humble opinion, there will almost certainly be a Super Mario Maker 3 at some point in the future. You can turn off the video now if you want. Thank you so much for watching. Still sticking around? Well, then allow me to explain to you why I believe this to be the case. It's mainly because of 4 very distinct reasons. 4 specific reasons with very specific names. The 4 reasons why I believe that there will be a Mario Maker 3 are the coin reason, the mice reason, the Donkey Kong Island reason, and finally, the reason 40. So let's talk about those reasons in order, and let's start with the coin reason. To understand why I believe that there will be a Super Mario Maker 3, we have to talk for a second about the top 10 best-selling games of a strange and ancient alien gaming console, the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 is to this day the best-selling console of all time, which really doesn't surprise me, given that it is the only major gaming console that I never owned. The 10 best-selling games on this platform all share something in common that is quite interesting. You see, the 10 best-selling PS2 games are GTA San Andreas, Vice City and GTA 3, Gran Turismo 3 and 4, Final Fantasy X and 12, Metal Gear Solid 2, Kingdom Hearts, and finally Dragon Quest 8. So what do all those games have in common? Well, they are all part of long-running series, as the numbers behind most of those games easily prove. Every game in this list but Kingdom Hearts is a sequel, which already tells us something quite interesting. It tells us that sequels often tend to outsell the original game. But that's not even the reason why we're talking about this mysterious list yet. The reason is a much simpler one. Every single game in this list eventually got a sequel. And there's a very simple reason why every one of those games got one. Because all those games were commercially successful. Which brings us to the plot twist of this little tale. You see, the best-selling game on this list is GTA San Andreas, with roughly 17 million copies sold on the platform. The 10th best-selling game is Dragon Age 8, having sold a little less than 5 million copies on the PlayStation 2. Super Mario Maker 2, however, sold 8.4 million copies. If Super Mario Maker 2 had been a PlayStation 2 game, those sales numbers would actually make it the 7th best-selling game on this console generation. And this comparison does not only work for the PlayStation 2. Super Mario Maker 2's sales would make it the 4th best-selling PS3 game, outselling other console-exclusive juggernauts like Uncharted 2 and even the original The Last of Us. If Mario Maker 2 were a PS4 game, it would be the 16th best-selling game on that console, and if it were a PS5 game, it would currently actually be the 2nd best-selling game there. 8.4 million copies sold is just a really high sales number in the modern gaming world. Super Mario Maker 2 was a big commercial success. It is the 23rd best-selling Switch 2 game, selling more than double the amount of copies of other already strong-selling games like Mario Tennis, Yoshi's Crafted Woolly World, or Fire Emblem Three Houses. So I know what at least one of you is currently thinking. Hold on, Ceave. Selling double the amount of copies than Mario Tennis, Yoshi's Crafted World, or Fire Emblem Three Houses did does not sound that impressive. Which, great catch, that's actually true, but that's not even the reason why I bring up those specific 3 games. Mario Maker 3 also outsold Pikmin 4, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Echoes of Wisdom, or Metroid Dread. The reason why I bring up that Super Mario Maker 2 sold more than double the amount of copies than Mario Tennis, Yoshi, or Fire Emblem did is a much simpler one. It's because Mario Tennis, Yoshi, and Fire Emblem all just got a sequel announced. Selling only half as many copies as Mario Maker did is obviously already good enough for Nintendo to already warrant a sequel. Super Mario Maker 3 is a game that has the potential to sell north of 10 million copies. There aren't many series in gaming that can potentially do that. Mario Maker 2 again sold more copies than the original release of The Last of Us did. But even better, Super Mario Maker 2 was almost certainly a lot cheaper to develop than The Last of Us ever was, meaning that Mario Maker 3 is just very likely to be extremely profitable. Economically, it is just a no-brainer for Nintendo to develop a new Super Mario Maker game. The series actually has the potential to reach the popularity of some of their absolute best-selling evergreen franchises, like Mario Party or Smash Bros. Nintendo is admittedly a very weird company, but they're still a company. Companies just do not pass up the opportunity to safely make a lot of money, and Mario Maker 3 is such an opportunity for Nintendo. So what is the coin reason for Mario Maker 3? Well, it is that Super Mario Maker 3 would be very likely to make a ton of coins for Nintendo. And unlike normal people, Nintendo actually likes tons of coins. So the first and honestly most important reason why I believe that we will see a Mario Maker 3 is because it makes a lot of sense economically. Hooray! Which already brings us to the second reason why I am a Mario Maker believer. The mice reason. Super Mario Maker 2 is a fine sequel to the original Mario Maker. The game is an almost straight up improvement over the original. There are a lot more elements, there are more graphic styles, more power-ups, more gameplay modes, more ways to play online, and more enemies. Super Mario Maker 2 is just an improvement over the original in almost every aspect. But there's one thing that the second Mario Maker actually did worse than the original one. And this thing is the user interface. Creating stages just felt a lot more natural on the Wii U tablet than it ever did on the Switch 2. And this is not by coincidence. It is because of a hardware limitation. Here's the problem. The Wii U gamepad uses a resistive touchscreen. The Switch, however, uses a capacitive touchscreen. And the different underlying technologies actually have huge implications for a game like Mario Maker. You see, resistive touchscreens actually work because there is pressure applied to a specific point. Those touchscreens react to pressure, which means they are usable with very thin stylus pens and extremely precise. A capacitive touchscreen, however, detects conductive objects, like our fingers, which is the reason why a phone touchpad doesn't work anymore as soon as we put on gloves. So for most use cases, capacitive touchscreens are superior. They look nice, they allow for multi-touch, making things like two-finger zoom possible, and so on. For most use cases, a capacitive touchscreen is superior. However, there is one thing that a resistive touchscreen does better. A resistive touchscreen is more precise. You see, the little pen that came with the Wii U's touchpad just allows for a lot more accurate inputs than our fingers do. Resistive touchscreens are a lot more precise than touchscreens that recognize conductivity. And this is the sad origin story of Mario Maker 2's UI problems. Many UI elements that were used in the original Super Mario Maker are impossible to implement in Mario Maker 2 because of the different hardware. The first Mario Maker, for example, was able to present all its elements in a big, nice little list because the stylus is just precise enough to select elements in a menu like that. The touchscreen of the Nintendo Switch, however, is nowhere near precise enough to allow picking elements from such a small list, forcing them to use lots of radial menus instead. Add to this that the interface is also designed to work with a single joystick, and the result is, well, thanks, I hate it. They really dropped the fuzzy with the user interface in the second Mario Maker. Creating stages just never felt as intuitive and fluid in the sequel to me as it did in the original. There are a lot more questionable design choices that they made, but there's just no denying that the main problem arose from the different hardware. And this is why I bring this up. You see, Nintendo very often approach their software thinking about what they can do with the hardware First, Nintendo likes to do unusual things with their consoles that allow for unique gameplay experiences. Be it putting an infrared camera into the Joy-Con, be it using touchpads like the Wii U, be it using double screens like the DS, or be it whatever they thought they were doing with the Virtual Boy. Here's a fun question. Why does Mario Maker even exist in the first place? How did Nintendo get the idea for the game? And at least according to my own little theory, it is probably because of the Wii U gamepad. I personally suspect that the idea for Mario Maker arose by Nintendo looking for unique gameplay experiences that are only possible because of the touchpad. Nintendo just always liked coming up with games that are only possible because of their unique hardware. Cool. So why are we talking about the UI problems that arose because the Switch used a different type of touchscreen, and about how much Nintendo likes to showcase the power of their hardware in a section called Mice in a video about Mario Maker 3? Well, because the Switch 2's Joy-Cons can be used like a PC mouse, obviously, which is huge for a game like Mario Maker. Mouse controls would be a massive game changer for level creation. A Super Mario Maker 3 would just be the perfect opportunity for Nintendo to showcase the unique capabilities of their hardware. Even better, mouse controls would actually allow Nintendo to fix the biggest problem of Mario Maker 2, the shaky user interface. It would allow them to improve their game precisely because of their unique hardware. Super Mario Maker 3 is the perfect opportunity to showcase what is possible because of Nintendo's unique hardware choices, something they historically like to do, something that is probably the reason Mario Maker even exists in the first place, and something they haven't really done with any game so far. And no, I do not count Drag X Drive as a game that shows off the mouse controls because, well, let's put it this way. If someone of you happens to know a guy who knows a guy that knows a guy that actually played Drag X Drive, please ask the guy to call their guy so that they can ask the guy if the game was any good, because I certainly do not know a guy that knows a guy who knows a guy that actually played it. So the Switch 2 having mouse controls, which are a perfect fit for Mario Maker 3, and Mario Maker 3 being a great chance to showcase the Switch 2's unique hardware, is the second reason why I'm a firm Mario Maker 3 believer. Which already brings us to the third reason why I believe we are likely going to see a sequel, the Donkey Kong Island reason. During the 40th Mario Anniversary Direct, Nintendo surprised the world by announcing something no one had asked for. They announced paid DLC for Donkey Kong Bonanza, only 2 months after the game's release. And the DLC is certainly something. It adds Donkey Kong's Island as an explorable place to the post-game, as well as a new roguelike game mode. But the reception to the DLC has been rather reluctant. It's not that there is something wrong with the DLC itself, it's more the circumstances of its release. The Donkey Kong Island area was just obviously intended to be a post-game area, like the Mushroom Kingdom was in Mario Odyssey, that got cut to be sold separately. And the additional game mode shares a lot of similarities with Odyssey's Balloon mode that was added for free in that game. It's obviously content that was finished, deliberately cut from the game, and is now being sold separately only 2 months after the release, in a game that already marked a price increase. People are understandably not feeling very fuzzy about this. So there isn't much to say about Donkey Kong's DLC other than paid DLC bad, free DLC good, but that is actually not the reason why I bring this up. You see, the Switch 2 era actually marks a pretty interesting shift in how Nintendo handles their games. For decades, Nintendo released their games on a console, sold them there, and then moved on to develop the next game. This, however, seems not to be the case anymore. A great example for this is another thing that was revealed alongside Donkey Kong's DLC. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is about to get a Switch 2 upgrade called Meetup in Bellabelle Park. So we do not know much about the Switch 2 upgrade other than that it will feature co-op gameplay and it will have to pay for it if you own the original Switch version of the game, meaning that the game is effectively getting paid DLC as well. Something that is not just happening with Bonanza or Mario Wonder. Kirby got a similar DLC, the Zelda games got a paid upgrade, and so did Mario Party. So all of this has obviously a, let's call it flavor, but there isn't much to say about this topic other than free DLC good and paid DLC bad, but this is once again not the reason why we're talking about it. The reason I bring this up is something different, something quite remarkable, and something that is actually extremely unusual in the video game industry. All those Switch 1 games are getting DLC years after their release, and they're getting DLC on a console that is not the original console on which they were released. Usually, games do not get DLC years after their release, and they certainly do not get DLC on consoles that came well after them. There's only a very specific type of game that gets this type of DLC, and those games have a name. It's GaaS games. GaaS is short for Games as a Service games, and it refers to, well, usually multiplayer games that can be played infinitely and are updated regularly. It's your League of Legends, your Rocket League, or your Hearthstone. So why do I bring up GaaS games in a segment about Donkey Kong Island in a video about Mario Maker 3, one might ask? Well, because modern Nintendo seems to be pushing for their single-player games to become games as a service likes. They're looking to turn their single-player games into never-ending revenue streams that print money years after release, even during the next console generation. They want us to buy Breath of the Wild at release, the DLC a year later, and now the upgrade for the game as the Switch 2 hits the shelves. They want us to buy Mario Party once, and then years later a DLC for it alongside a new hardware gimmick. They want us to buy Donkey Kong Bonanza and months later the post-game to it, and so on. Nintendo seems to be pushing for their games to stay relevant for a long time, hopes to keep monetizing their games even years after the original release. So first, say it with me, free DLC good, paid DLC bad, but apart from the obvious, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Nintendo games usually leave behind a much longer cultural impact than most other games do, and many people enjoy them many years after the original release. It is not necessarily bad if Nintendo goes back and adds additional content to their games years later. It also isn't necessarily bad that they sell upgraded versions for their old games. The main problem is that a lot of those upgrades so far have been, well, lame. Awesome, so free DLC good, paid DLC bad. And Nintendo is currently pushing for their games to be more like games as a service that stay relevant for years and years. But why are we talking about this in a video about whether we are ever going to see a Mario Maker 3? Well, because Mario Maker 3 actually makes a lot of sense as a GaaS game. It might actually be their only franchise that would benefit from regular paid DLC. You see, Mario Maker is not a game with a defined beginning and end point. It is a sandbox to create levels for some and an infinite way to play Mario levels for others. Mario Maker is a series that would really benefit if Nintendo continued to develop content for it. And other than with Bonanza, most people are actually probably pretty excited about this idea. So the third reason why I believe that a Mario Maker 3 is likely in development is that Nintendo is currently pushing to turn their games into everlasting products that can be remonetized over and over again. And Mario Maker is the best game they have for such a push. Which finally brings us to the fourth and final reason why I'm very positive for the future of Mario Maker, the reason 40. Almost exactly 10 years ago, Super Mario celebrated its 30th anniversary. And for Mario's 30th birthday, Nintendo had actually prepared something very special. A special game that actually created an entirely new franchise in the Mario universe. And this game is obviously Super Mario Maker. Super Mario Maker was Nintendo's big marketing push to celebrate Mario's 30th anniversary, which brings us to the present. So, have you ever had to hold a presentation in school or at work and you were severely underprepared, like you had to talk about a topic for 15 minutes, but you got absolutely nothing to say? Well, while I do not know if you ever had to do this, I certainly know that Miyamoto's son had. Miyamoto had the honor to moderate the direct for the 40th Mario anniversary, and wow, they got nothing. The biggest reveal for Mario's anniversary was a Yoshi game. A Yoshi game is as much a Mario game as a dinosaur is a plumber. Apart from that reveal, they only revealed a strange co-op DLC for Mario Wonder, the next Mario movie that everyone already knew about, and a Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 re-release, which finally answers the eternal question why Mario Galaxy 2 was not part of the 3D Mario All-Star Collection, because they were planning to sell it to us in this bundle. In other words, the 40th anniversary of Mario has been a bit disappointing. So, just to be clear, I don't think that this is a big deal. These anniversaries are always a bit strange because the anniversary isn't the important part, is it? The important part is that their games are good, and I very much prefer it that they release their games when they're done and not around an arbitrary date. Nonetheless, Nintendo chooses to celebrate these anniversaries and usually uses them for a big marketing push, which is how they found themselves in the weird situation of having to announce a Yoshi game to celebrate Mario. And this is where all of this becomes interesting, and where a lot of ideas we waffled before actually come together. You see, Nintendo is currently selling a new console, and one of the biggest hardware features of this console are mouse controls, yet they still have no real game to show off this feature. Nintendo is currently focusing on reselling their old games and on keeping them relevant for years and years to come. Super Mario Maker was originally the game to celebrate Mario's 30th anniversary, and now they suddenly face the 40th anniversary. They have nothing to show to us but a Yoshi game, and yet they still decide not to do the obvious? The obvious move would it have been to reveal a Switch 2 upgrade for Super Mario Maker 2. Switch 2 upgrade that adds mouse controls to Mario Maker, that adds a couple of new gameplay elements and maybe a celebration game mode thingy to the online play. It is the perfect thing to do with Mario's anniversary. They don't have anything major to show. And yet they chose not to do so, which kind of raises the question of why. Why didn't they do a Mario Maker 2 Switch 2 upgrade for the anniversary? And there is an obvious answer, isn't there? The obvious answer is that there is a Mario Maker 3 in the works and that they don't want it to compete against an enhanced port of the second game once it releases. They don't want to port mouse controls to Mario Maker 2 because it is going to be the unique selling point of Mario Maker 3. They don't want to market an enhanced version of the second game because it would run counter to their eventual marketing push for the third one, and they do not want to do anything Mario Maker related for the 40th anniversary because there is something else planned for the franchise in the future. Or in other words, the fact that Mario Maker 2 did not get a Switch 2 version at the 40th Mario anniversary makes me suspect very much that they are working on a sequel. Hooray! So to put the pieces together, Super Mario Maker 2 sold extremely well and several games that actually sold less copies already got a sequel announced. Super Mario Maker 3 would be a perfect game to showcase a unique hardware feature of the Switch 2, a feature that they haven't really shown off so far. Super Mario Maker 3 would make perfect sense as a game that Nintendo can continue to sell DLC for years, something they're currently really pushing for, and the 40th Mario anniversary just happened, which would have been the perfect opportunity to do a Mario Maker 2 Switch version release. The fact that they did not makes me suspect that they are working on the sequel. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, turn up the volume and blow the air horns. I am hyped. Awesome. So with this, there are only two questions left that our magical tea leaves have to answer. When will the game release and will it feature fuzzies? So for the release date, my best guess would be summer 2027. I suspect that we will get Smash Bros next year because it is a very crucial franchise, and I doubt that Mario Maker and Smash hit the console the same year. So an early 2027 reveal followed by summer release would make sense to me. But at that point, the tea leaves become a bit unreliable, don't they? As for fuzzies, yes, the game will feature fuzzies. How do I know? Well, because if it didn't, it would be unimaginably terrible. So we're not even thinking about it. Hooray! So here we have it, why I believe that Super Mario Maker 3 is currently in development, and predictions that are probably giving everyone a good laugh who is watching this in the future. Before we wrap this up, just two more things. So first, a huge and gigantic Super Mario Maker 3 into existence willing thank you to all my fuzzyful patrons whose names are currently scrolling by. Not only do those wonderful people regularly get access to small bonus scripts and behind the scenes stuff, but their generous support is also the very thing that is fueling this baseless speculation. A gigantic thank you to all of them for that. Second, since we are already here baselessly speculating about sequels, let's also predict whether other Nintendo franchises are getting sequels soon. So Luigi's Mansion, well, the third one actually sold numbers comparable to Mario Wonder. Luigi's Mansion is currently one of Nintendo's biggest franchises actually. It's 100% getting a sequel. Splatoon 4, similar to Luigi's Mansion. Splatoon just sold so many copies that a sequel is pretty much a given. A Zelda remake of Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages in the style of Link's Awakening, well, that one is a bit tricky, but it is something I want to happen, so let's will this into existence together. Hooray! It's happening! A new Pokemon Snap game, well, you have to be strong, fans of the photography, but I do not believe in Pokemon Snap 3. A new Ring Fit adventure game, well, we better hope Nintendo is working on it, given that Ring Fit probably enhanced my life expectancy by roughly 27 years on its own. Certainly happening. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker 2, my calculations sadly only reveal a chance of 17.2% for this to happen. Finally, when are we getting a new mainline Mario game? Well, that is actually a topic for its own video, but I honestly think that is probably still years away. My best accurate guess is the 17th of November 2028. Hooray! So now that we all got planning security, make sure to lay your holidays accordingly. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially free today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. Finally, if you truly love this video and want to support clairvoyance like this, then there is also the option to support the channel via Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, lots of hugs.